Big news shaking up the NFL rumor mill. The Cincinnati Bengals might be preparing to trade their star defensive end, Trey Hendrickson. That's right. One of their most consistent pass rushers could be on the move. Now here's the real question. Is this a smart move for Cincinnati? And could a team like the Chargers actually be the ones to make a push for him? Before we dive deeper into this breaking story, a quick reminder. If you want the fastest updates and in-depth breakdowns of moves like this, make sure to hit that subscribe button, drop a like, and tap the bell icon so you never miss a beat. Alright, now let's get into the latest news. So here's the situation. Hendrickson has been a rock-solid force for the Bengals defense, the kind of player who gives you reliability every single game. But with him turning 31 this December, the timing of a potential trade raises eyebrows. Could this be the Bengals looking to cash in before his value dips? Or is it Hendrickson himself pushing for a contract that could carry him through the final years of his career? And then, the fun part to speculate. If the Chargers decided to chase this deal, what would it take? Would they need to give up draft capital? Or is this more of a wait-and-see situation? Adding Hendrickson would instantly change the look of that defensive front. Imagine pairing him with their current lineup. The thought alone has fans buzzing. When you look at Trey Hendrickson's numbers, it's hard not to be impressed. Over the past few seasons, he's been nothing short of dominant. 14 sacks in 2021, 8 more in 2022, and nearly 18 total in his last 2 campaigns combined. For a guy who started slow in New Orleans, those numbers speak volumes about how far he's come. In fact, since joining Cincinnati, Hendrickson has piled up over 70 career sacks and consistently proven himself as one of the most dangerous edge rushers in the league. Losing a player like that doesn't just weaken a defense. It changes the entire identity of it. But here's where it gets interesting. The Bengals scheme itself might be evolving. Reports suggest a shift from their traditional 4-3 alignment into more of a 3-4 system. And while Hendrickson thrives as a hand-in-the-dirt defensive end, fitting him into that new look might not be as seamless. On the other side of things, teams like the Chargers tend to favor a hybrid approach, leaning heavily on the 4-3 setup. That kind of system plays directly into Hendrickson's strengths: 2 defensive ends, 2 interior linemen, letting him attack off the edge exactly where he's most dangerous. Which raises the big question. Is this just a mismatch of scheme in Cincinnati? Or is there a much larger plan at play? From a roster standpoint, adding Trey Hendrickson sounds like a dream. But it isn't as simple as plugging him in. The Chargers already have names in the mix: Tuli Tuipulotu, Khalil Mack, Bud Dupree, and rising players like Carlo Kemp and Caleb Murphy competing for snaps. That 4th rotation spot is still unsettled, which makes Hendrickson's potential arrival all the more intriguing. Imagine the depth. A relentless pass-rushing lineup where any combination could wreak havoc on opposing quarterbacks. But here's the catch. Cincinnati isn't just going to let him walk. The word is they're asking for significant value in return. A first-round draft pick and a young defensive talent. That's not a small price. So the real debate becomes, who could the Chargers possibly give up? Deion Henley instantly comes to mind, but let's be real, he's untouchable. The Chargers see him as a cornerstone, not trade bait. After that, names like Justin Hollins, or maybe even Kyle Kennard could surface. It's a tough puzzle because every young defender carries potential, and the front office has to decide if Hendrickson's proven production is worth sacrificing future growth. When you start thinking about the trade package, things get complicated. Some names are simply untouchable. Jamari Caldwell isn't going anywhere, and Deion Henley's future is clearly locked in. But if the Bengals insist on a young defender, maybe the Chargers would consider parting with someone like Tuli Tuipulotu. He's young, talented, and could be seen as a long-term piece for Cincinnati. Other names like Tarheeb Still or Junior Colson could also surface, especially if the Bengals are more focused on system fits than proven production. Of course, pairing a first-round pick with a promising player is a steep ask. It's the kind of deal that forces a front office to weigh the present against the future. Do you gamble on Hendrickson's immediate impact, or hold on to developing talent that might shape the team's next decade? Now, let's not forget who Hendrickson is at his core. His 2024 season speaks for itself. A PUF grade of 88.1 overall, ranking 9th in the league. and an elite 90.4 pass rush grade, good for fifth. He logged 22 solo tackles, 18 sacks, 2 forced fumbles, numbers that prove he's a nightmare for offensive lines. Sure, his run defense isn't his strongest trait, but when it comes to collapsing the pocket and creating chaos, very few do it better. That's why the idea of sending away a young defender plus a first-rounder becomes such a fascinating dilemma. On one hand, you'd be giving up a potential building block. On the other, you'd be gaining a relentless veteran who can tilt games on his own. That's where the decision gets tough. Giving up someone like Tuli Tuipulotu would sting, not just because he's young and talented, but because he feels like he's on the verge of a breakout year. Trading him away just to land Hendrickson might solve a short-term need, but it risks sacrificing a cornerstone for the future. And honestly, the Bengals situation doesn't make things any easier. Their defense already looks shaky, and with players like Shamar Stewart caught up in contract uncertainty, even flirting with the idea of walking away from the league altogether, it paints a picture of a unit struggling to hold itself together. Without Hendrickson, that defense could collapse even faster. Now, here's the interesting wrinkle. Cincinnati isn't necessarily demanding a defensive end in return. That opens the door to different kinds of trade packages. But imagine pairing Hendrickson with Stewart, 2 edge rushers side by side, one a proven force, and the other a developing talent. From their perspective, that's a future they might be willing to gamble on. From the Chargers' angle, though, it's a high-risk, high-reward move. You'd be adding proven production, but also age to your defensive line. Hendrickson still has years left in the tank, but you're also leaning into the win-now mentality while giving up potential building blocks. And for those wondering how realistic it all is, the oddsmakers still believe Hendrickson is most likely to remain in Cincinnati. Behind the Bengals, Carolina emerges as a possible landing spot, followed by Detroit, Indianapolis, Green Bay, Arizona, and then the Chargers further down the list. So while the speculation is fun, the reality is this: prying him away won't be easy, and the price tag will be steep. So yes, there's a chance. But let's be honest, it's a slim one. Trades like this don't just cost draft picks or young talent. They also mean paying big money. And when you look at today's market for elite edge rushers, the numbers are staggering. TJ Watt pulls in $41 million per year. Myles Garrett sits at $40 million. Danielle Hunter at $35.6 million. Max Crosby at $35.5 million. And Nick Bosa at $34 million. Trey Hendrickson would almost certainly land somewhere in that neighborhood. Realistically, you could see him demanding an average around $37 million annually, with hefty guarantees attached. And remember, many of those big deals were signed by players right in Hendrickson's age bracket, around 30 or 31, which means he's still in line for one monster contract, and maybe even another one after that. So here's the heart of the dilemma. Are you willing to give up a future building block, maybe even someone like Tuli Tuipulotu, plus valuable draft capital, and commit to a massive new contract, all for a veteran edge rusher? It's the kind of move that signals win now at the highest level, but it comes at a steep price. At the end of the day, the Hendrickson conversation is about risk versus reward. Do the Chargers gamble on proven production? Or do they hold steady and let their young players grow into the future of the franchise? The answer may depend less on Hendrickson himself and more on just how far this team is willing to push its chips into the middle of the table.